The bell shrieked, a metallic declaration of freedom that sent a tidal wave of teenagers surging through the hallways of Northwood High. Laughter echoed, and the air thrummed with the chaotic energy of adolescence. Amidst the familiar swirl, a quiet eddy formed around the figure of Alana Vance. That was the word that clung to her like a shadow. New school, new town, new life. She moved with a subtle grace, her dark hair falling over her shoulders like a curtain, her eyes, the color of deep moss, taking in everything with an unnerving stillness. She wasn't shy, not exactly, but she was observant, a silent spectator in a world she was still mapping. Her arrival had been the subject of whispers for a week, a transfer student from somewhere. No one knew much, and Alara offered little. She dressed simply, carried a worn leather satchel instead of a flashy backpack, and spoke only when spoken to, her voice soft but clear. This quiet demeanor, however, was a red flag for Northwood's resident apex predator, Jocks Thorne. Jocks was a force of nature, albeit a destructive one, built like a linebacker, with a perpetually sneering lip and a reputation for making life miserable for anyone he deemed an easy target. He ruled the social hierarchy through intimidation and a well-practiced smirk. He had a posse of equally brutish friends, a shadow of muscle and unthinking loyalty that followed him everywhere. Jocks thrived on fear, on the flinch of a nervous freshman, the averted gaze of a timid sophomore, and Alara, with her quiet intensity and unfamiliarity, was in his eyes a prime candidate for a public initiation into his reign. The cafeteria, a cavernous echo chamber of clattering trays and boisterous chatter, was Jax's favorite hunting ground. He liked to make an example, to establish dominance early. Alara, clutching a tray with a single apple and a bottle of water, navigated the crowded tables, searching for an empty spot. Her gaze swept the room, not with anxiety, but with a detached analytical precision, like a strategist surveying a battlefield. Jock spotted her. He nudged his cronies, a glint of malicious amusement in his eyes. "Looky here, boys, the new bird's trying to find her nest." His voice, a low rumble, carried just enough to make a few heads turn. Alara found a small, unoccupied table near a window, away from the main As she moved to sit, a large, hulking shadow fell over her. Jocks. He stood over her, arms crossed, blocking the light. His friends fanned out behind him, forming a menacing semicircle. Well, if it isn't the mysterious Alara," Jocks drawled, his voice thick with sarcasm. "Heard you're too good for us common folk. Don't talk much, do ya?" Alara slowly placed her tray on the table. She looked up at him, her musk-green eyes unblinking, devoid of fear. "I speak when I have something to say." Jax's smirk widened. "Oh, a philosopher are we? That's cute. You know, around here we like people who know their place, and your place, little bird, is usually under someone's boot." He leaned closer, his breath hot and stale. "So, how about we start your education? Give me that apple." He gestured with a meaty hand. Alara looked at the apple, then back at him. "No." The single word, calm and unwavering, hung in the air, silencing the immediate vicinity. Jocks blinked, genuinely surprised. No one said no to him, not directly, not like that. His face darkened. "What was that? Princess, did you just say no?" His voice dropped, a dangerous edge creeping in. "I said no," Alara repeated, her gaze steady. "It's my apple." A low growl rumbled in Jax's chest. This wasn't going as planned. He needed to escalate, to reassert control. He glanced at his friends, who were now watching with keen interest. He decided to go for the classic, humiliating move. He'd yank the chair out from under her, send her sprawling, and then kick her tray, scattering food everywhere. It always worked. It was quick, public, and guaranteed to break the spirit of any newcomer. He moved swiftly, his hand shooting out to grab the back of Alara's chair. His muscles tensed, ready to pull. Big mistake. The instant his fingers brushed the chair, Alara moved. It wasn't a sudden jerk or a panicked scramble. It was a fluid, almost imperceptible shift. Her right hand, which had been resting on the table, shot out, not at Jocks, but to the edge of her tray. Her left foot, previously flat on the floor, suddenly hooked around the leg of her chair. Jocks pulled. He expected resistance, a struggle, a fall. Instead, the chair, anchored by Alara's foot, didn't move. His own momentum, combined with the unexpected lack of give, sent him off balance. At the same precise microsecond, Alara's right hand, which had secured her tray, now flicked with lightning speed. Not at Jax's face, but at his chest, where his open backpack, slung carelessly over his shoulder, hung. A small, almost invisible object flew from her hand. It wasn't a weapon, just a tiny, perfectly aimed flick of a loose button she'd apparently been fidgeting with. The button, propelled with surprising force, landed squarely on the release buckle of Jax's backpack. The buckle unfastened. Jocks, still stumbling from his failed chair pull, felt the sudden shift in weight. His backpack, heavy with books and various illicit snacks, swung wildly, then slipped entirely from his shoulder. It hit the floor with a resounding thud. But Alara wasn't done. As the backpack hit the ground, she simultaneously executed the second part of her maneuver. Her left foot, which had anchored the chair, now pushed it forward, just enough to nudge the falling backpack. The backpack, instead of simply collapsing, was propelled by the chair into a perfectly angled trajectory. It slid not just across the floor, but directly into the path of a passing cafeteria worker pushing a cart piled high with freshly baked bread. The cart, caught unawares, hit the backpack. The impact wasn't violent, but it was enough. The cart wobbled, then tipped. A cascade of golden brown loaves of bread tumbled out, rolling across the slick cafeteria floor like a dozen oversized bowling balls. They scattered in every direction, some skidding under tables, others bouncing off legs, one even landing squarely in the lap of the principal, who had just entered the cafeteria for a routine check. The entire sequence, from Jax's pool to the bread avalanche, took less than 3 seconds. Silence, a stunned, disbelieving silence, descended upon the cafeteria. Every eye was on Jock Thorne, who stood frozen, his mouth agape, his face a rapidly shifting palette of confusion, embarrassment, and dawning horror. He was off balance. His backpack was on the floor, and around him lay a sea of bread, a testament to his spectacular, public failure. The principal, a stern woman named Ms. Albright, slowly, deliberately, removed a warm loaf from her lap, her eyes fixed on Jock Thorne. Ms. Albright's voice, though not a shout, carried the weight of impending doom. What in the name of all that is holy is going on here? Jock's, caught in the spotlight of utter humiliation, felt his carefully constructed image of invincibility crumble. His friends, usually quick to laugh at others' misfortune, were now trying desperately to suppress their snickers, their faces contorted in a mixture of fear and amusement. The entire cafeteria, once a cacophony, was now a silent, judging audience. He looked at Alara, who was calmly taking a bite of her apple, her eyes meeting his with an almost imperceptible flicker of something akin to pity. He had expected her to be crying, cowering. Instead, she was eating an apple, utterly unfazed, while his world imploded around him. The full weight of his colossal miscalculation crashed down on him. He wasn't just in trouble with the principal, he was a laughingstock. His carefully cultivated aura of menace had evaporated in a puff of breadcrumbs. He imagined the whispers, the memes, the endless mockery that would follow. His reign was over. "No, Ms. Albright, I didn't mean to," Jock stammered, his voice cracking, his face flushing a painful crimson. He looked wildly around, then back at Ilara, a desperate plea in his eyes. He had to stop the principal, stop the laughter, stop the inevitable downfall. He blurted out, his voice barely above a desperate whisper, loud enough for those closest to hear. "Please, don't tell her. I'll do anything. I'm sorry. I swear, I won't ever bother you again. Just, just tell her it was an accident. I'm begging you, mercy. Please." The word mercy from Jock Thorne, the school's most feared bully, was a sound no one had ever expected to hear. It hung in the air, thick with disbelief. His friends stared, aghast. The cafeteria workers, who had been preparing to scold him, paused, their mouths agape. Alara slowly chewed her apple, her gaze still fixed on him. She swallowed. "It was an accident, wasn't it, Jock?" she said, her voice clear and calm, cutting through the silence. "A rather unfortunate chain of accidental events, wouldn't you say?" Jock nodded frantically, sweat beading on his forehead. Yes, exactly. Just ... A big accident." Ms. Albright, though still holding a loaf of bread, raised an eyebrow. She was shrewd, and the speed with which the new girl had diffused the situation, turning the tables so completely, had not escaped her notice. She looked from the bread-strewn floor to Jax's pleading face, then to Alara's serene expression. "An accident that involved your backpack, Thorne, and a rather precise trajectory," Ms. Albright observed, her voice dry. "And you, Alara, seem remarkably composed for someone involved in such a big accident." Alara offered a small, polite smile. "Sometimes, Ms. Albright, the most chaotic events have surprisingly simple origins, and sometimes people learn from their mistakes." She looked pointedly at Jock's catching her meaning, nodded even more vigorously. I've learned a lot. "Big lesson, huge." Ms. Albright sighed, a long-suffering sound. "Very well. Jock, you will clean up every single crumb of this bread, and then you will report to my office. We will discuss the origins of this accident in more detail." She paused, then added, "And Alara, perhaps you could assist him in understanding the importance of time." Alara's smile widened slightly. "Of course, Ms. Albright." As Ms. Albright walked away, leaving a trail of quiet murmurs in her wake, Jock immediately dropped to his knees, frantically gathering the scattered loaves. His face was still beet red, but the terror in his eyes had been replaced by a desperate need to escape the public eye. You saved me," he muttered, not looking at her, his voice barely audible. "I merely allowed you to save yourself," Alara replied, taking another bite of her apple. and to learn a valuable lesson about consequences and about underestimating people. From that day forward, Jocks Thorne was a changed bully. Not entirely reformed, perhaps, but certainly he still had his swagger, but it was tempered with a newfound caution, especially around Alara. He never bothered her again. In fact, he went out of his way to avoid her, a silent testament to the single, humiliating minute that had shattered his reign. Alara, meanwhile, found her place at Northwood High. She wasn't feared, but she was definitely respected. The story of the bread incident spread like wildfire, embellished with each retelling, but the core truth remained. The new girl had an unseen edge, a quiet power that could turn the tables faster than anyone could blink. Students approached her with a mixture of curiosity and deference. They learned that her silence wasn't shyness, but a profound observation. Her calm wasn't weakness, but a deep well of strategic thought. It turned out Alara had grown up in a small, isolated community where resourcefulness and quick thinking were not just valued, but essential. Her parents were engineers, but not the kind who worked in corporate offices. They were innovators, problem solvers who built and repaired complex machinery in remote, challenging environments, often with limited tools and under immense pressure. Alara had been homeschooled for much of her life, her curriculum a blend of advanced physics, practical mechanics, and the art of anticipating outcomes. She had learned to observe, to predict, to understand the subtle forces at play in any situation. Whether it was the trajectory of a falling object or the psychological vulnerabilities of a bully, her tools were her mind, her keen senses, and her ability to act with precise, economical movements. The incident with Jocks was just a small demonstration of a lifetime of training. She hadn't sought conflict, but when it came, she was prepared. She hadn't wanted to hurt him, but she certainly wanted to teach him, and she had, in a way that no amount of dissension or scolding ever could. Northwood High became a slightly more peaceful place. Jocks, though still prone to grumbling, found himself occasionally helping out with school events, a subtle shift in his behavior that few attributed to the new girl, but many, including Jocks himself, knew was her doing. Alara, the quiet observer, had subtly reshaped the social landscape, not with brute force, but with the elegant precision of a master strategist, proving that sometimes the biggest mistakes lead to the most profound lessons, and that mercy, when earned, can be the most powerful weapon of all.